The sinking of the RMS Titanic in 1912 remains one of the most harrowing maritime tragedies in history. While much has been discovered and documented about the ship's ill-fated maiden voyage, numerous mysteries still surround the events, circumstances, and tales associated with the Titanic. Delving into these enigmas, we explore 10 puzzling aspects of the Titanic saga that continue to intrigue and baffle researchers, historians, and enthusiasts alike. Number 1. The luck of the SS. On the fateful night when the Titanic met its doom, another ship, the SS Californian, was closer to the disaster site than any other vessel. The Californian's proximity to the sinking giant has been a topic of intrigue and controversy since that tragic night. How could a ship, stationed at a mere few miles away from the Titanic, fail to come to its aid promptly? The Californian had stopped for the night due to the treacherous ice fields ahead. Its radio operator, Cyril Evans, had sent a warning to the Titanic about the ice, only to be curtly told to keep quiet because the Titanic's operator was busy. Later, when the disaster struck, the Californian's radio was turned off for the night, leaving them unaware of the Titanic's distress signals. But the radio silence was not the only mysterious element in this tale. Crew members aboard the Californian claimed to have seen rockets being fired into the night sky. These rockets, which were distress signals from the sinking Titanic, should have prompted immediate action. However, instead of instantly recognizing them as distress signals and racing to the aid of the Titanic, the Californian's crew debated what they were seeing. Were they just shooting stars, celebration fireworks from another ship, or indeed a genuine cry for help? In the end, while many aspects of that night have been pieced together, the exact sequence of events, decisions made on the Californian, and the reasons behind its inaction remain subjects of debate and wonder. The luck of the SS Californian in being so close yet so distant in the hour of need is an enigma that continues to resonate in the annals of maritime history. Number 2. The real reason behind the shortage of lifeboats. The most glaring and tragic oversight on the Titanic was the inadequate number of lifeboats. For a ship carrying over 2,200 passengers and crew, the Titanic was equipped with lifeboats that could accommodate merely 1,278 people. This grim arithmetic has long been a focal point of the ship's legacy. But why was there such a stark shortage? To begin with, the Titanic was designed during a time when maritime regulations had not caught up with the rapid advances in shipbuilding technology. The Board of Trade's rules at the time required British vessels over 10,000 tons to carry only 16 lifeboats. Titanic, boasting a tonnage of 46,000, carried 20 lifeboats, technically surpassing the requirement. Yet, it was nowhere near enough for the ship's actual capacity. The inadequacy was not merely a matter of oversight. Aesthetic and commercial considerations also played a role. Some reports suggest that White Star Line's management, including J. Bruce Ismay, believed more lifeboats would clutter the deck and detract from the ship's luxurious appeal. Furthermore, with the ship being touted as unsinkable, there was a misplaced sense of security that a massive array of lifeboats was unnecessary. There were also technological innovations at play. The Titanic had an advanced watertight compartment design, believed to make her practically unsinkable. This bolstered the belief in her invincibility and may have contributed to the complacency regarding lifeboat provisions. In the aftermath of the disaster, the shortage of lifeboats became a glaring emblem of negligence and complacency. The tragedy catalyzed significant changes in maritime safety regulations, including requirements for lifeboat capacity. Today, the lifeboat shortage serves as a poignant reminder of the dangers of overconfidence and the dire consequences of underpreparation. Regal, the dog who saved lives. Newfoundland dogs are known around the world for being able to tolerate the coldest temperatures, as well as working around the clock to protect their owners from any dangers possible. This appeared to be the case when discussing the events of Regal, the dog of whom helped to save numerous lives during the sinking of the RMS Titanic. Regal was the dog owned by the captain of the Titanic, of whom was believed to have perished early on in the sinking of the ship. His dog, however, continued on with his duties, and after the survivors were aboard the lifeboats and the ship had sunk pretty deep, Regal, the dog, jumped off the starboard bow and landed in the frigid, icy waters. Many of those in lifeboats remembered seeing Regal swimming around, almost as if completely unaffected by the temperature, and doggy paddling his way onto floating debris or beside lifeboats, where he could get a moment's rest. After a long while of waiting for search and rescue, it appeared that lifeboat number 4 was far away from the search efforts of the crews near the area looking for survivors. As the Carpathia came into the region, the crew of which would come to pick up the majority of the survivors, it appeared that lifeboat 4 had begun to drift under the bows of the ship and was at risk of being run down. Although the survivors of the lifeboat did not understand the danger they were in, it appeared that Regal was well aware. He quickly began barking and alerting the crew of the Carpathia as loudly as he could, whereas the survivors on the lifeboat were already far too weak to allow their voices heard. On board the Carpathia was a man named Jonas Briggs, of whom heard the barking of the dog and noticed the lifeboat drifting closer and closer to the bow. He signaled for the boat to turn, and the survivors were met with the crew of the Carpathia quickly coming to their aid. Regal would later be adopted by Jonas Briggs and would live out the rest of his days in a home in rural Scotland to a ripe old age. Number 4. Fire, which began even before the Titanic embarked on its maiden voyage, is a lesser-known but critical piece of the ship's tragic narrative. This was not an uncommon occurrence on ships of the day, and many of the crew would have been well versed in managing such fires. The primary method of dealing with a coal fire was to shovel the burning coal into the ship's furnaces, effectively using the combustion to the ship's advantage. However, the intensity and stubbornness of this particular fire meant that it was still burning days into the voyage. Official inquiries into the Titanic's sinking gave the fire scant attention, focusing instead on the iceberg and other factors. But the coal bunker fire remains an intriguing and unsettling element of the story. Could a hidden blaze within the ship have sealed its fate? While it's impossible to determine the exact impact of the fire on the subsequent events, the very existence of the blaze adds another layer to the multifaceted tragedy of the Titanic, underscoring the myriad forces at play on that fateful journey. No. Number 5. The RMS Titanic was an engineering marvel, but hidden beneath its gleaming decks and opulent interiors was a peril that many believe played a role in its sinking, a fire that smoldered in coal. Bunker number 6, the fire which began even before the Titanic embarked on its maiden voyage, is a lesser-known but critical piece of the ship's tragic narrative. This was not an uncommon occurrence on ships of the day, and many of the crew would have been well versed in managing such fires. The primary method of dealing with a coal fire was to shovel the burning coal into the ship's furnaces, effectively using the combustion to the ship's advantage. However, the intensity and stubbornness of this particular fire meant that it was still burning days into the voyage. Official inquiries into the Titanic's sinking gave the fire scant attention, focusing instead on the iceberg and other factors. But the coal bunker fire remains an intriguing and unsettling element of the story. Could a hidden blaze within the ship have sealed its fate? While it's impossible to determine the exact impact of the fire on the subsequent events, the very existence of the blaze adds another layer to the multifaceted tragedy of the Titanic, underscoring the myriad forces at play on that fateful journey. Number 6. The self-proclaimed experts were wrong. When an investigation into the matter of the Titanic was conducted, the team of investigators consulted with experts of the Titanic and its constructed procedures and worked around the clock to accurately portray the sinking of the ship. They had believed that the ship had originally sunk rather calmly, and that the witness interpretation of the ship rising up high and then splitting in half with his boilers exploding into the sky was nothing more than survivors giving a traumatized and overly dramatic account of the real-world events. Additionally, they had believed the witnesses to have been making up a variety of false information that spread amongst themselves as they conversed on the ships of which took the survivors altogether back to their closest port. A number of these false claims were that there were not enough lifeboats for everyone, as the ship was more than capable of holding more than enough lifeboats for the entirety of the crew and the passengers, and that the crew had shot off multicolored flares into the sky, of which colored flares were not ever used aboard such ships, and that no such crate of multicolored flares was ever purchased or stored aboard the ship. Interestingly enough, these self-proclaimed experts on the sinking of the RMS Titanic were proven to be wrong over the next few decades as investigations persisted. It turns out that the survivors' account of the boat sinking was completely accurate upon finding the Sudden-Con wreckage back in 1985, of which confirmed the boat's breakup, its steep rise, and the boilers aboard the ship having exploded due to the introduction of freezing cold waters. Additionally, a crate of multicolored flares was also found in the wreckage, which later uncovered that the flares were seen as experimental flares and were not sold commercially, which leaves many wondering how they got on the boat in the first place. Definitely one of the most interesting finds, however, shows that the survivor's account was completely accurate and that not a single additional lifeboat had been found among the wreckage. Number 7. The enigma of the Californian's delayed rescue effort. The role of the SS Californian on the night the Titanic sank remains one of the most debated and perplexing aspects of the disaster. As previously mentioned, the Californian was closer to the Titanic than any other ship when the iceberg collision occurred. Yet the series of events that transpired and the Californian's apparent delayed response have left historians and enthusiasts with lingering questions. The Californian, captained by Stanley Lord, had halted its voyage due to the dense ice field. In the hours leading up to the Titanic's distress signals, the Californian's radio operator had warned the Titanic about the icy conditions. But as night deepened, the Californian's wireless was turned off, effectively severing the primary means of communication. However, the mystery deepens beyond the mere silence of the radio. Throughout the night, crew members aboard the Californian reported seeing rockets, distinct signals of distress at sea. The sight of these rockets should have prompted an immediate rescue effort. Yet, for reasons that remain contentious, the Californian did not spring into action. Was it disbelief, a series of misunderstandings, or something else that prevented the Californian from rushing to the Titanic's aid? Captain Lord maintained that he was unaware of the gravity of the situation and believed the rockets might have been signaling something other than a distress call. He also cited the risks associated with navigating through the ice field in the dark. The enigma surrounding the Californian's actions, or lack thereof, has resulted in numerous theories, each attempting to dissect the ship's decisions that night. While some see it as a grave error in judgment or a failure of duty, others believe it was a series of tragic miscommunications. Whatever the underlying reasons, the Californian's delayed response remains a haunting and unresolved chapter in the Titanic's tragic tale. Number 8. The identity of the Titanic orphans. Among the heart-rending tales of loss and survival that emerged from the Titanic disaster, the story of the Titanic orphans is particularly poignant. Two young boys, aged 4 and 2, were found alone on the ship's collapsible B lifeboat when it was rescued by the RMS Carpathia. With no parents or guardians in sight, the identity of these children became an immediate mystery. The boys were initially cared for by a woman named Margaret Hayes, a first-class passenger who had also survived the sinking. She took them to her home in New York, where they were dubbed the Titanic Orphans by the press. their endearing photos capturing the hearts of many. Who were these children? And how did they end up alone on a lifeboat in the midst of such chaos? The mystery began to unravel when a woman named Marcelle Carretto saw their pictures in the newspaper and immediately recognized them. They were her sons, Michel and Edmond Navratil. Their father, Michel Navratil Sr., had abducted them from their mother in France, intending to start a new life in America. Under the guise of a widowed father, he booked passage on the Titanic under the pseudonym Louis M. Hoffman. Marcelle Carretto, upon learning of her son's whereabouts, immediately traveled to New York and was joyfully reunited with them. The story of the Titanic orphans is a testament to the myriad personal narratives and destinies that intersected on that fateful journey. Amidst the broader tragedy, their tale illuminates the enduring bonds of family and the unforeseen twists of fate. A book predicted the sinking. Although it has often been regarded as one of the most accurate and strangest coincidences in all of history, it appears that before thoughts of even constructing the Titanic were started, there had been a book written that completely predicted the events that would unfold on the RMS Titanic's maiden voyage. The book was written and published back in 1898, more than 14 years before the ship set off on its journey through to the North Atlantic. The book is titled as The Wreck of the Titan and tells a harrowing tale of the largest ocean liner ship that had ever been built, known as the Titan. In the story, the Titan sets off on its journey and strikes an iceberg in the North Atlantic Ocean, which causes it to quickly sink. Although that might be more than enough for people to see the coincidences, eerily enough, that does not appear to be the end of it. In the book, the Titan sank in April, the same month as the Titanic sank. Both ships held similar names. Both were described as being the largest craft afloat and the greatest works of men. The book claimed that the Titan was over 800 feet long and displaced more than 45,000 tons. Similar to the Titanic, that was 882 feet long and displaced 46,000 tons. Both ships were described as unsinkable, while also utilizing the strengths of a triple-screw propeller. Both were described as having a shortage of lifeboats, as well as striking the iceberg at 25 knots on the starboard side, 400 nautical miles from Newfoundland, exactly the same. And last but not least, both ships were described as carrying 2,100 passengers, of which the majority suffered a terrible fate. The cause for these strange coincidences are completely unknown, and even the author himself has been surprised as to the strange nature of the book and the way it matched the sinking of the Titanic. But what do you all think of these strange and unexplainable mysteries pertaining to the sinking of the RMS Titanic? Number 10. The fate of the ship's cats have long been considered good luck on ships. Their presence believed to protect sailors from storms and ensure safe voyages. The Titanic, in keeping with this maritime tradition, had its own ship's cat. Often seen by crew members during the ship's preparations and trials in Belfast, this feline, along with her litter of kittens, was a part of the Titanic's brief life. However, the fate of this cat remains a mystery that tugs at the heartstrings of many Titanic enthusiasts. Be sure to leave your questions and answers in the comments section below and help us to grow this community while working to solve these unexplained mysteries. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.